She wore the cheapest dress in the room, and the Mafia prince chose her. Clara Hayes only came to the Boston charity gala because she was broke, unemployed, and desperate, surrounded by silk, diamonds, and people who could smell poverty beneath perfume. She wanted to disappear. Then Lorenzo Falcone, the most dangerous man on the waterfront, crossed the ballroom, looked straight through every rich woman there, and asked her to dance. Let us hit pause right on this opening shot of Clara. Look at her standing there in this cathedral of old money, surrounded by polished marble and chandeliers. Her heart is practically beating out of her chest. She is clutching that champagne like a life raft, sweating bullets because she knows her cheap dress screams that she does not belong among all this imported silk. Her so-called friend Chloe nudges her, whispering for her to just smile. You and I need to recognize what this really is. It is absolute isolation in a crowded room. And here is the brutal life lesson, guys. Our insecurities do not just make us feel awkward at fancy parties. They act as a massive, glowing beacon for the exact kind of predators who hunt for a fragile soul. Clara whispers that she wants to get out of there, which is a totally natural flight response when you are swimming with social sharks who can literally smell your fear. The tragic irony is Chloe's real motive. Clara just lost her job and is drowning in debt, and Chloe thinks this gala is the perfect hunting ground to find some wealthy savior to pay it off. That fancy champagne Clara is sipping, it probably tastes like straight battery acid to her. It is wild how we blindly trust the people close to us. We assume our friends have our back, but desperate people will push you right into the deep end. The painful truth of life is that when financial panic sets in, human beings will completely abandon their most basic instincts for self-preservation. Just look at the contrast here. Chloe has that effortless, unearned swagger of someone who never checks a bank balance, tossing Clara a totally fake compliment about her outfit just to keep her from bolting. They are in this historic Boston hotel, a place where old money mixes with ruthless social climbers. Clara spent her entire afternoon desperately memorizing the unspoken rules of high society, trying to build a camouflage of etiquette to survive the night. It breaks your heart because it never works. The hard life lesson we all have to swallow is that you cannot simply study your way into belonging. Predators do not hunt the rebels who break the rules. They target the terrified outsiders who are sweating and trying way too hard to follow them. Watch the background closely. It begins with the gaze. Clara actually shivers, feeling the weight of a stare burning right into her skin before she even turns around. It is her primitive alarm system warning her that a predator has arrived. Across the room stands Lorenzo Falcone. Notice how he is not laughing or playing the social game. He stands perfectly still, a shadow waiting to strike. His dark eyes lock onto her with a clinical intensity. Clara's heart rate spikes as she tries to casually ask Chloe who he is. You and I must learn from this exact moment. The human body always recognizes true danger long before the conscious mind catches up. When your deepest instincts scream that you are being hunted, do not ask questions. You simply turn around and walk away. Look at Chloe stiffening up like a deer that just heard a twig snap. She drops her voice to a frantic whisper, begging Clara to look away. She knows Lorenzo is the unofficial prince of the underworld, the guy who seized absolute control after his own father mysteriously vanished 3 years ago. It was a ruthless power grab, but here is the part that breaks your heart. Despite the warning, Clara cannot help but let her eyes drift right back to his. This is the tragic birth of a trauma bond playing out in real time. She is mesmerized by the exact thing that will destroy her. The life lesson here is as bitter as it gets. We often disguise our fatal attraction to danger as simple curiosity, but staring back into the darkness is always the first step toward total ruin. Lorenzo projects a sharp, lethal energy that dangerous men use to assert dominance without speaking. His suit is quiet but aggressively expensive, silently crushing the flashy billionaires around him. As he steps forward, flanked by two massive guards, the crowd literally parts for him. Now, watch Chloe. The second she realizes the wolf is heading their way, she abandons Clara, muttering a pathetic excuse about getting another drink. It is the perfect isolation phase, leaving the prey completely defenseless. It makes you want to yell at the screen. You and I must remember this harsh reality about human nature. Anyone can stand by your side when the music is playing and the drinks are flowing. True loyalty is only ever proven in the terrifying presence of fear, never in its absence. Clara is frozen, trapped in a terrifying state of panic as he steps into her personal space. She catches his expensive, earthy cologne, a scent designed to mask the violence underneath. She spots the thin scar on his jaw, and those pitch-black eyes that absorb everything while revealing nothing. But his opening move is what makes him a true mastermind. He does not ask if she is having a good time. He plainly states, "You are not enjoying yourself." It is a flawless execution of psychological dominance. He is hijacking her reality right out of the gate. The lesson we all need to remember is vital. The very moment someone bypasses your voice and attempts to dictate your internal feelings to you, they are initiating absolute control over your life. Clara instantly defaults to the polite script we use when backed into a corner by someone powerful. She desperately wants an exit, but Lorenzo shatters her defense. He bluntly calls her a liar, pointing out she has checked the doors 3 times since he arrived. It is terrifying how he has been studying her distress. He blindly takes a glass from a waiter without breaking eye contact, proving his absolute control. Pushed to the brink, Clara lifts her chin and asks if she should be afraid. It breaks your heart because that fake defiance is exactly what he wants. Here is the bitter truth. You can put on a tough face all you want, but monsters will always feast on the very fear you are trying so desperately to hide behind a brave, socially acceptable mask. Lorenzo actually looks amused by her defiance. To a man like him, panic is prime entertainment. He intentionally crosses a boundary by softly dropping her first name. When she asks how he knows it, he smoothly replies that he studies the out-of-place elements in his city. Clara apologizes for her cheap dress, still obsessing over her status. But Lorenzo executes a brilliant pivot. He tells her he watched her give her only genuine smile of the night to the elderly coat check worker, ignoring the billionaires. He is proving that he sees the real her. It is the ultimate, fatal seduction. We all carry this desperate, aching need to be truly understood by someone, and a skilled manipulator will use that exact desire to forge the heaviest chains you will ever wear. Tries to defend Chloe, but Lorenzo clinically shreds her friend's motives without an ounce of pity. He claims he knows the dark secrets of everyone in the room because it is how he survives. It is his paranoia weaponized into control. Then, he holds out his hand and tells her they are going to dance. It is a command disguised as a courtesy. Clara's internal alarms are deafening right now, screaming at her to run, yet this dark curiosity completely overrides her survival instincts. She weakly mumbles that she is a terrible dancer, essentially surrendering to him. Listen to me. When your rational brain begs you to run, but your ego feels intoxicated by the attention of a dangerous person. That ego will walk you straight into a cage and gladly hand over the key. His unshakable certainty acts as an anchor for her spinning mind. Clara actually places her trembling hand into his. Watch her face as she registers the gentle warmth of his grip, a jarring contrast to his bloody reputation. This is the terror foundation of Stockholm Syndrome. Her brain cannot reconcile the monster with the soft touch. He guides her to the floor, dismissing his guards with just a tiny flicker of his eyes. His hands settle firmly on her lower back, completely invading her personal space as he whispers for her to follow his lead. The psychological render is done. The most dangerous people in the world do not physically force you to submit. They carefully craft an environment where yielding to their dark power feels like the absolute safest option you have. Look closely at how they move. Lorenzo navigates the floor with a terrifying, predatory grace. Suddenly, Clara feels a massive shift in the room. The same elites who treated her like a ghost are now completely captivated by her, simply because the boss has claimed her. He is feeding her a taste of his dark power, and it is highly addictive. He whispers that everyone is wondering who the mystery girl is. When she asks what story they should tell them, he smiles and says it is entirely up to her. It is a beautiful, evil illusion of choice. He makes the captive feel like she holds the keys. You and I must never forget this brutal truth. The most unbreakable prison in the world is the one where the inmate firmly believes they built their own cell. Let us hit pause on this scene for a second, because the irony here is just absolutely suffocating. The music fades, and Clara tries to throw up a weak little boundary, telling him she really should go. But watch Lorenzo. He completely ignores her words. His hand stays planted firmly on her spine, steering her away from the safety of the crowd and out into that chilling autumn air. While he guides her to this empty terrace, he is verbally shredding her friend Chloe. He paints Chloe as a total parasite. He is severing her last emotional lifeline while pretending to be her protector. The bitter lesson here is that when a dangerous person wants to consume your reality, their very first move is to quietly cut the ropes tethering you to the outside world. Clara stares out at the Boston skyline, shivering. You can feel how painfully aware she is of the massive gap between his glittering world and her own fragile existence. Before she can even get a word out, Lorenzo slips off his ridiculously expensive jacket and drops it over her shoulders. It looks like this sweeping, romantic gesture, right? But it is purely territorial. He is wrapping her in his scent, physically marking his claim. Then he drops the hammer. He tells her he knows all about the crippling gambling debts her friend's father owes to some very bad people. He holds all the cards now. It is a heartbreaking truth to swallow. A grand favor from a predator is never an act of grace. It is just the first payment on a debt. They will never, ever let you settle. We need to look at Clara for who she really is in this exact moment. She is drowning. She is totally broke and swallowed by unpaid bills and completely starved for a single night of glamorous escape. That makes her the absolute perfect target. When Lorenzo tells her that her friend only brought her here to use her as bait for loan sharks, he is not just sharing gossip. He is strategically nuking her entire support system. He makes himself look like the only honest guy in the room by proving everyone else is corrupt. She confesses she just wanted a break from the constant rejection of her life. Here is the tragic life lesson we all need to remember. The exact second we become desperate enough to escape our reality, we become completely blind to the monsters smiling at us in the dark. Notice the sick irony of his strategy right here. When Clara blushes and admits she felt ashamed for just wanting to play dress up, Lorenzo actually softens. He looks right at her and simply calls her human. It hits her right in the chest. That fake empathy is how ruthless people manufacture instant intimacy. With a string quartet playing softly in the background, he builds this flawless little bubble of safety around them. Then he tells her they are leaving. Not asking, telling. When she nervously points out that she does not even know him, his arrogance flares up. He says she knows exactly who he is. We watch this and cringe because the lesson is so clear. We often mistake a dangerous man's overwhelming confidence for a protective shield, totally missing that it is actually a cage. You and I have to pause and really look at how he frames this trap. He takes her totally justified fear and twists it, making it a test of courage. When she takes his hand, she actually believes she is making an empowered choice, completely blind to the grooming. He parades her down these hidden service corridors, while the terrified staff bow their heads. Clara jokes about whether she should be worried, and Lorenzo bluntly says yes. The craziest part? She laughs. That is the magic trick of a true manipulator. They weaponize the absolute truth to seem incredibly trustworthy. The chilling lesson is that an honest villain is not any less lethal. He simply knows exactly how to make you walk yourself right into the slaughter. Stepping into that private, smoke-filled back room is Clara's absolute point of no return. You look at this space, and it is dripping with criminal money, packed with cold-blooded men and incredibly vacant women. The second Lorenzo walks in, the entire room goes dead quiet. It is a heavy, suffocating silence. Clara is forced to feel the crushing weight of exactly how much power this man wields. Lorenzo slides his hands to the small of her back again. This time it is not to comfort her. He is deliberately broadcasting absolute ownership to every violent thug staring at them. She is officially marked as his. It is a tragic reality check for anyone watching. When a powerful man publicly stakes his claim on you, he is not elevating your status. He is completely erasing your freedom. Clara orders water, desperately trying to keep her head clear. But the bitter irony is that she is already drowning in his undertow. She glances around at all these terrifying men staring her down and nervously asks about his associates. Lorenzo does not even blink. He coldly dismisses every man in that room as a fake, claiming none are worth introducing her to. It sounds like a compliment, right? It is actually a devastating psychological tactic. By elevating her above his crew, he strokes her ego while slicing away any chance she has to ask for help. The life lesson hiding in this scene is incredibly dark. When someone convinces you that everyone else in their world is worthless trash, it is only a matter of time before they eventually look at you the exact same way. You can literally see Clara's body reacting to the danger, but her sick fascination with him is already overriding her basic survival instincts. This is the exact moment the trauma bond takes root. Trying to find logic, she asks if he makes a habit of rescuing stray women. Lorenzo's answer is a masterpiece of manipulation. He looks deep into her eyes and swears he has never done this for anyone. He tells her the room is staring because she is an unprecedented, one-of-a-kind exception to his cold rules. He manufactures this fantasy where she is the only woman alive who can melt his frozen heart. Let me tell you the harsh truth about dealing with dangerous people. Being the chosen one of a monster is never a badge of honor. It is simply a glowing target painted right on your back. Let us watch this brutal collision because it is painful. Clara's drunken friend, Chloe, suddenly stumbles in. Chloe's date takes one terrified look at Lorenzo and literally drags Chloe away in a complete panic. Lorenzo does not even blink. He just keeps his predatory eyes locked right on Clara. When Clara quietly admits she and Chloe have grown apart, Lorenzo jumps on it. He plays the wise philosopher, saying, "Extreme pressure always reveals true cowardice." He is using her friend's terrified retreat to make himself look like an unshakable rock. The bitter truth is right here. When someone constantly highlights how your loved ones are failing you, they are not offering you comfort. They are just quietly eliminating the competition for your absolute loyalty. It is devastating to watch how perfectly he exploits her history of being abandoned. Clara had already been thrown away by her ex and her own mother the second she ran out of money. Real loyalty is a totally alien concept to her, making her dangerously desperate for a savior. When she asks if he is testing her character, he flashes a disarming smile and says he is only revealing his own. What happens next is not a real conversation. It is a clinical, surgical extraction of her trauma. He gets her talking about her wrecked childhood and her failed dreams. Listen up, guys. A master manipulator does not ask deep questions because they want to know your beautiful soul. They ask so they can map your open wounds, finding the exact emotional levers to pull when they finally lock the cage. To keep her hooked, Lorenzo tosses her perfectly curated pieces of himself. He talks about his love for sailing and rare books, painting himself as a misunderstood intellectual instead of a ruthless criminal. It is a classic move to build fake intimacy. That cozy illusion shatters when Judge Harrison walks up to the table. Lorenzo completely refuses to stand, showing zero basic respect. When this powerful judge asks to be introduced to Clara, Lorenzo shoots him down with a single, razor-sharp word. No, it is a massive flex. He's proving to Clara that his power sits miles above the actual law. Here is the terrifying reality check we need to understand. A monster who protects you from the lesser evils in the world is still, at the end of the day, a very dangerous monster. The tension hanging in the air after the judge leaves is basically pure adrenaline for Clara. She whispers that he was being rude, but you can see it in her eyes. She is thrilled by his aggressive protectiveness. This exact thrill is the twisted foundation of Stockholm Syndrome, where a victim confuses a captor's sick possessiveness with passionate love. Lorenzo leans in close, his breath grazing her neck, and softly declares that everyone in this room needs to watch and learn that she belongs solely to him. It is a horrifying claim of absolute ownership, but instead of running for her life, she melts into him. We must face a very dark psychological truth here. Our desperate human craving to feel safe can so easily trick us into wanting to be entirely owned by the villain. Let us hit pause right here because you and I need to look closely at this exact second. For years, Clara wore her lonely, fiercely independent struggle like an absolute badge of honor. But his dark, possessive words just picked the lock on a repressed exhaustion deep inside her mind. She stared into his eyes, begging to find a cruel joke. But the terrifying truth is that when a megalomaniac wants you, their focus is dead serious. She told him he did not even know her. He just touched her wrist, grounding her in his gravity, and promised he knew enough. And then she smiled. The most brutal irony of fate is that the deadliest moment is not when the cage shuts. It is the exact second you look at the warden and decide to stop fighting. That little smile was not just giving up. It was an engraved invitation for him to rewire her psychology. She is so hypnotized, she completely misses the camera flashing in the dark corner, oblivious to the ghost documenting the mistake that will ruin her life. By the time the blackmail surfaces, she will be tangled beyond rescue. Lorenzo walks her out a hidden exit, and suddenly they are surrounded by heavily armed guards. Anyone else would run screaming from those lethal weapons. But Clara just rationalizes it. It truly breaks your heart to watch, because once you accept the reality of a predator, you will literally convince yourself that the guns pointed at your head are just there to keep you warm. Instead of sprinting away from the hitman, she lets the surreal sickness of the criminal underworld wash over her. A flawless black Bentley pulls up, and the driver bows like Lorenzo is a king. When he casually suggests dinner, Clara realizes her stomach is screaming. She had been living on half a sandwich, chewed up by the stress of the normal life she is currently throwing away. Lorenzo guides her into the ridiculously soft leather of the car, and his faint smile tells the whole tragic story. He just won. He is stepping up as her absolute provider now. It is a bitter pill to swallow, but extreme money is the ultimate anesthetic. It numbs all your survival instincts until the golden cage looks so ridiculously comfortable that the poor bird completely forgets she even has wings. You have to watch closely how he slowly turns the screws here. The glass partition sliding up between them and the driver is the classic isolation chamber of a predator. Clara suddenly realizes she is drowning in his heavy, expensive jacket. It is a physical claim on her body. When she tries to take it off in a blind panic, he just tells her to keep it. His eyes never leave her, tracking her every breath with the dominance of a man who owns the world. She tries to use sarcasm to build a wall, asking if kidnapping women is his usual Tuesday routine. He ignores the joke, flatly pointing out how terrified she is. "I am just cautious," she lies. It is such a fragile, pathetic little shield to use against a monster in the dark. Now comes the part that is truly agonizing to witness. He leans in and demands that she hands over a piece of her soul. "Tell me something true," he commands, hunting for the exact emotional fractures he needs to crawl inside her head. Clara lets out this awful, nervous laugh, totally thrown by how he just steamrolls over polite conversation. But sociopaths do not care about social rules. "Give me something real," he pushes again, using the dark, quiet intimacy of the back seat like a weapon. And she just breaks. The loneliness has hollowed her out so much that she practically bleeds out her darkest secret. She admits she is terrified of turning into her mother, isolated and financially ruined at 60 years old. And just like that, he has the blueprint to her deepest trauma. You and I really need to pause and appreciate the terrifying genius of his next move. It is pure psychological mirroring. "What happened to her dreams?" he asks, lowering his voice into a perfectly calibrated tone of profound empathy. Clara confesses her mother threw away her freedom for a parasite and shattered when he walked out. Lorenzo absorbs it, instantly realizing her fierce independence is just a trauma response. Then he drops his own calculated sob story to build trust. "I never wanted this life," he whispers, staring at his ghostly reflection in the window. He claims he used to love architecture, carefully painting himself not as a ruthless cartel boss who murders people, but as a tragic victim of circumstance. And the absolute saddest part is that she buys every single word. There is nothing quite like a tragic origin story to really cement a trauma bond. He casually drops the fact that his father was murdered by his best friend. It is a brutal, calculated shock tactic meant to completely short-circuit her brain. "Some choices are not choices at all," he tells her, perfectly washing his hands of all the blood he has spilled. The Bentley stops at a dark, unmarked door in the north end. He walks her inside, firmly establishing his total control over the environment. My grandfather opened this place in 1956, he says. As they step inside, they are completely swallowed by flickering amber lights and thick nostalgia. It is a psychological time capsule designed to make her forget what century it is, let alone what mortal danger she is actually in. Now they introduce the sweet, harmless old man to completely erase her survival instincts. A silver-haired patriarch named Giovanni intercepts them, wrapping Lorenzo in a warm hug that makes the monster look like a normal boy. Lorenzo introduces him as his godfather. Then the old man delivers the most manipulative compliment in the book. He loudly announces that his precious godson has never brought a woman to this sanctuary. You must be very special, Giovanni insists. You can physically see the trap snap shut as a flush of heat climbs right up Clara's neck. Her starving ego absolutely eats up the fake validation. They guide her to a dark corner booth, and Giovanni quickly takes away her menu. Piece by piece, every single choice she has left is being quietly and systematically erased. The sickest joke of all is how they frame the total loss of her freedom as some kind of five-star luxury. I will take care of everything, the sweet old godfather promises. The dining room looks full of normal people, but if you look closely, you can see Lorenzo's armed guards locking down the perimeter. Clara is completely blind to it. She smiles and tells Lorenzo how warm his godfather is. He helped raise me after my mother died of cancer, Lorenzo whispers, twisting the knife of vulnerability even deeper. He paints this beautiful picture of Giovanni teaching him how to cook and read when he was 12. It is agonizing to watch. The tragic orphan routine is the deadliest trick in the book because it hijacks her maternal instincts to protect the very wolf that is preparing to eat her. Toss in a few expensive glasses of wine, and the last of her mental defenses just dissolve into thin air. As plate after plate of ridiculous food arrives, from fried artichokes to heavy truffle pasta, Clara just spills her guts. She hands him the master keys to her psychology, confessing all her failed jobs, her broke ex-boyfriends, and her desperate living situation. In return, he feeds her this incredibly fake, poetic sadness about how lonely it is at the top of an empire he never even wanted. Right before our eyes, Stockholm Syndrome starts sinking its teeth in. She stops seeing a ruthless killer and starts seeing a tragic, misunderstood poet. "You are not what I expected," she whispers, taking a bite of dessert. It is like watching a train crash in beautiful, heartbreaking slow motion. Let us break down how perfectly he tests the waters here, just to see how deep his hooks have set. "What did you expect?" he asks. Clara admits she was waiting for a cold, heartless monster, just like her friends warned her about. And this is where the guy proves he is an absolute master manipulator. "Make no mistake, I have done things that would terrify you," he warns her, leaning into the danger. By casually reminding her that he is a murderer, but acting perfectly gentle with her, he makes her feel like she is the most special girl in the world. "Then why show me this side of you?" she asks, completely under his spell now. He reaches across the table, his cold fingers finding the frantic, racing pulse at her wrist. He is literally measuring the physical panic he just successfully manufactured. "Because from the exact moment I saw you, I knew you were different," he murmurs. It is the ultimate narcissistic death blow. He sets her up as the one shining angel who can finally save him from his tortured soul. You can practically hear her mind splintering in half. Every human survival instinct is screaming at her to run for the door, but the trauma bond is pulling her closer to his touch. And just as she leans in, the spell shatters. His phone violently buzzes, In less than a second, the tragic poet vanishes, and the cold, terrifying Mafia boss mask slams right back into place. He abruptly stands up to handle some bloody crisis. But the trap does not loosen. Giovanni instantly glides over with 2 glasses of sweet liqueur, seamlessly digging in to keep the poor bird inside her golden cage. Let us hit pause for a second, because you and I have to talk about the Godfather's role in this twisted little fairy tale. Giovanni plays the perfect supporting actor, faking total shock that his godson is suddenly so obsessed with the girl he met 5 minutes ago. It is brilliant, really. It makes Clara feel like she is the chosen one. When she asks about the guy's obvious red flags, Giovanni spins this tragic romantic backstory. A passionate kid, a broken heart after his father was murdered. He basically paints Clara as the magical cure for a deeply dangerous, damaged mobster. The lesson here is simple. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in a tragic backstory, because they make you want to fix the person who is about to break you. Then Lorenzo walks back to the table, and the illusion of the sweet, charming architect completely shatters. The guy is practically vibrating with suppressed violence, standing there like a predator whose territory just got invaded. He does not ask her if she wants to leave. He announces that the date is over. As they walk out, the Godfather pats her on the back, nudging her right into the snare. The second they step out of that cozy restaurant, the air turns ice cold. Lorenzo's security team is entirely on edge, hands hovering right over their hidden guns. Clara goes from feeling totally cherished to realizing she is in a war zone. Life is funny that way. Sometimes the safest you ever feel is right before the trap snaps shut on your leg. A normal person would be thrilled to escape an active Mafia hit squad, right? But Clara actually feels disappointed that the date got cut short. That right there is the tragedy of her addiction starting to kick in. Lorenzo gets in the car and casually recites her exact home address. The romantic spell breaks for a second, and survival instinct kicks in. She demands to know how he has her address. Lorenzo does not even flinch. He admits he ran a full background check on her during the charity gala. When she calls him a creep, he completely flips the script, calling it a necessary survival tactic. Here is a little life lesson for everyone. If someone has to violate your boundaries just to trust you, they are never going to keep you safe. Look closely at this scene with me, because it is absolutely brutal to watch. He just rattles off her entire life story like he is reading a grocery list. 27 years old, unemployed, recently fired from a magazine, he weaponizes her own failures to strip away whatever armor she has left. As his massive armored car rolls into her rundown, impoverished neighborhood, the power dynamic becomes sickeningly clear. She stares out the window at the cracked pavement and the broken streetlights, suddenly hyper-aware of how utterly powerless she is against a guy with endless money and zero morals. The harsh truth of life is that poverty does not just empty your wallet. It strips away your defenses until a monster with a heavy checkbook looks like an angel. Clara mutters that they are here, mostly because the silence in that expensive car is suffocating her. Lorenzo looks at her rumbling apartment building like a wolf, sizing up a very flimsy fence. He tells her he is walking her to the door, and let us be real, it is not a request. They walk up 3 flights of stairs in dead silence, the sheer physical size of him making the wallway a corpseful like a coffin. She fumbles with her keys, totally falling apart under his stare, and stammers out a thank you for the weird night. He leans in and whispers that he hopes it was weird in a good way. It breaks your heart to watch. The lesson is brutally simple. When someone shows you they hold all the cards, do not stick around to see what game they are playing. If you want to know how a smart girl falls in love with her own destruction, watch this exact sequence. Lorenzo starts dismantling her boundaries with the oldest trick in the book, the calculated touch. He reaches out and gently touches her hair. She tells him it is a bad idea, but her body language completely gives her away. And guys like Lorenzo, they prey on that hesitation. He tells her he is going to see her again, completely erasing her right to say no. You want to scream at the screen and tell her to run, but you also understand why she stays. It is a tragic fact of life. We are so desperate to be seen, to be touched, to feel like we matter, that we will happily invite the big bad wolf inside if he promises to keep us company. Stick with me on this one, because this is where the movie really twists the knife. Lorenzo tells her that wisdom is highly overrated, completely mocking her common sense. He brushes his thumb against her lower lip, short-circuiting her brain, and casually mentions he is sending a car for her tomorrow. She tries to remind him she never actually agreed to a second date, but the guy just smiles. He has already won. Clara runs up to her miserable apartment, her hands shaking so hard she can barely lock the door. She should be terrified, but she is actually thrilled. The adrenaline is already replacing her logic. Here is a life lesson you should never forget. The most toxic people do not break your door down. They just make you want to hand over the keys. You have to feel for Clara here, sitting alone in a room that constantly reminds her she is failing. The peeling wallpaper, the stack of overdue bills, it is enough to make anyone want to escape. And then there is Lorenzo's expensive jacket, sitting right there on her cheap sofa. Instead of packing it up to return, she actually picks it up and breathes in his cologne. Her gut is screaming at her that this man kills people for a living, but that loneliness in her chest is screaming even louder. She stands by the window in the dark, watching his taillights disappear down the street, already counting the minutes until he comes back. Life teaches us the hard way. When you are starving for a way out, even poison starts to look like a 5-course meal. This next part is where the psychology gets genuinely terrifying. Clara suddenly notices a black sedan following Lorenzo's car as it drives away. She instantly realizes someone is hunting him. But instead of locking her deadbolt and thanking her lucky stars she is out of the crossfire, she actually worries about him. This is the exact moment she crosses the line. Her phone buzzes with a text from him telling her to sleep well. A normal girl would be calling the police because he hacked her private phone number. But Clara just smiles, feeling a rush of dark excitement, and types back a single word of compliance. It is a sobering life lesson. Empathy is a beautiful thing, but giving it to someone who views you as property will only ever destroy you. You and I need to talk about what happens the morning after the adrenaline wears off. Lorenzo texts back 2 simple words, "Good girl." It makes your skin crawl, right? He is talking to her like a pet. Clara wakes up to a miserable, rainy Tuesday, and for just a brief second, reality sets in. She realizes she is flirting with a mafia boss who stalks her. She tries to do the right thing, sending out resumes and looking at her bank account, but she cannot concentrate on any of it. She just keeps staring at her phone, secretly terrified that he is going to get bored and forget about her. Here is a harsh truth about human nature. It is incredibly easy to let go of your principles when the wrong person makes you feel like the center of the universe. Right at noon, the movie drops the hammer. A fancy courier knocks on her busted door, carrying a massive box. Lorenzo is essentially invading her safe space with a pile of cash. Inside is this breathtaking green silk dress, designer heels, and real emerald earrings. It feels like a fairy tale, but we know it is a trap. These are not romantic gifts, they are a uniform. He is buying her. Clara takes the dress out, and suddenly her miserable apartment fades away. The silk feels so good against her skin, offering a total escape from her crushing poverty. It is devastating to watch her fall for it. The life lesson here is one we all need to remember. The devil rarely shows up with horns and a pitchfork. Usually, he arrives carrying exactly what you always wanted. Tucked inside that expensive box is a handwritten note from Lorenzo, casually mentioning how good she would look wearing absolutely nothing. It is so arrogant, but Clara blushes anyway. For one split second, the little voice in her head screams at her to box it all up and run for the hills. But the fantasy is just too strong. She holds the emeralds up to the mirror, completely mesmerized by the woman looking back at her. Right then, her best friend Chloe sends a frantic text, begging her to stay away from this guy. Clara just deletes the message and turns her phone off. She is cutting her own lifeline. The lesson is simple but heavy. When you start hiding the truth from the people who love you, you are already completely under the control of the person who does not. Come with me for this final shot, because it perfectly captures the tragedy of it all. As the sun goes down, Clara puts on the dress and the jewels. She stares in the mirror and genuinely does not recognize herself. She looks powerful and rich, but she knows deep down she is just playing dress up for a mobster. It is a fake identity, built to hide the fact that she is broke and terrified. But she would rather live in his dangerous fantasy than her own miserable reality. At exactly 8 o'clock, her phone chimes. Her ride is here. She takes a deep breath and walks out the door, straight into the fire. It is a powerful life lesson for us all to remember. The hardest cages to escape are never the ones built out of iron. They are the ones we walk into willingly. All right, hit pause for a second because we need to appreciate the sheer psychological warfare happening in this car. The logistics completely shift to keep Clara off balance. And when she slides into that heavily tinted ride, who is waiting in the shadows? The architect of her capture. Lorenzo gives her this slow, intense visual sweep, practically stamping his name on her altered look. Clara tries to play it humble, saying the gifts were too much, but he instantly shuts that down. He reaches right across the seat and touches the emerald against her skin. Look at the power move here. By telling her the gifts are nothing, this megalomaniac is basically whispering that his wealth and his control over her have zero limits. It is terrifying, but also brilliantly executed. And of course, that single touch sends a massive dopamine spike straight through Clara's brain. Lorenzo is sitting there, looking absolutely flawless, using his own physical charm as a weapon to completely paralyze her common sense. When she finally asks where they are going, just trying to get a grip on reality, he drops a bomb. They are heading to his private house. He dresses it up as a simple dinner date, throwing her a fake bone of control. But guys, moving a target into your primary territory is the ultimate predator move. And the most heartbreaking part, Clara is actually thrilled to be let into his secret world. Her terror gets completely swallowed up by morbid curiosity. This is the exact moment her mind starts rewriting her own kidnapping as a romantic adventure. Today, you and I are going to unpack this tragedy together. Right as the jaws of the trap snap shut, Lorenzo sits back, literally feeding off Clara's racing heartbeat and nervous energy. She looks at him and asks the million-dollar question, should she be afraid? Lorenzo delivers this masterclass in deception, swearing she is completely safe in his world. It is the classic narcissist playbook. He guarantees her physical safety while systematically stripping away her free will. Clara knows, logically, that this mob murders people for a living, yet the trauma bond is already so deep that she swallows his promise like it is the gospel. As that car rolls out of Boston and into the dark coastline, she effectively surrenders the very last shred of her survival instinct. Watch how he plays the slot machine with her emotions, giving her just enough intermittent reinforcement to keep her hooked. He holds her hand, faking this deep intimacy, and casually brings up her secret passion for writing. When she asks how he knows, he brushes it off, claiming he just remembered a passing comment, totally hiding the fact that he has been surveilling her. Clara falls for it, confessing that she writes stories about strong women saving themselves from danger. Stop and think about the bitter irony here. This brilliant woman is literally drafting survival manuals for fictional heroines, but she is sitting right next to the monster who is locking her chains, and she cannot even see the padlock. It is a tragedy playing out in real time. He does not stop there. Lorenzo demands access to the deepest parts of her mind, arrogant enough to claim that only his opinion matters. He starts digging into her late-night panics, asking what keeps her awake in the dark. Clara, totally exposed, admits she is terrified of going broke and ending up with nothing. Lorenzo instantly turns this into a weapon, leaning in to ask what will be on her mind tonight. Clara admits she will be thinking about him, and boom, there is the triumphant smile. He just hacked into her subconscious, and honestly, this is the part that hurts the most to watch. It is a brutal truth of human nature. We will literally hand the keys to our own destruction right over to the monster, as long as he promises to keep the monsters outside the door. Stick with me, because this is where the isolation tactic reaches an entirely new level. The car winds up a private road and pulls up to this massive, sprawling glass fortress hanging right over a violent crashing ocean. Clara is practically trembling with awe when she asks if this is his home. Lorenzo plays it cool, saying he just likes the privacy. But look at the background, the armed guards hiding in the shadows, the security cameras tracking every single move. It is a military compound dressed up as architectural digest. When he guides her through the front door, with his hand resting on the small of her back, it is not a gentlemanly gesture. It is a claim of ownership. And the bitter lesson here, a gilded cage is still a prison, even if the view takes your breath away. The inside of this place is basically a psychological funhouse designed to mess with your head. Lorenzo deliberately mixes these massive, intimidating glass walls looking out at the Black Sea with soft, warm woods and cozy fabrics. It creates this totally fake illusion of a safe harbor. He scatters priceless art everywhere just to scream culture and hide the fact that his money comes from blood. Clara steps right into the script, praising the design, and he smoothly credits the moonlight. Then, out of nowhere, his housekeeper, Mrs. Romano, just materializes like a ghost to announce dinner. Lorenzo politely asks for a minute to have a drink, but do not let the domestic vibe fool you. People like the housekeeper are totally conditioned to be the silent witnesses to a predator. The second the housekeeper vanishes, Lorenzo initiates the grand tour, which is a massive part of the grooming process. He shows off the kitchen where he supposedly cooks to unwind, and the gym where he stays lethal. He is building a completely fabricated character for her. Then he opens the doors to this massive library, and this is where he drops his heaviest weapon, the illusion of a tortured, deep soul. Clara spots these architectural blueprints on a drafting table. when she asks if he drew them, Lorenzo lets this perfectly timed, tiny flash of vulnerability cross his face. It is terrifyingly smart. He knows that if he shows her a harmless creative hobby, her brain will instantly shut down its warning sirens, leaving her completely wide open for the final strike. He sighs and writes off the drawings as just some old abandoned hobby, dragging her even deeper into the fantasy. Clara leans over the table, genuinely impressed, telling him he should have been an architect. Lorenzo just stares at her with this intense, predatory focus, soaking up her admiration. He tells her the plans are for a community center in a poor neighborhood, asked for by a guy named Giovanni. He straightens the papers with this obsessive care, selling the absolute lie that he just wants to build a safe place for kids. And just like that, Clara's entire concept of a ruthless crime boss evaporates. It is the ultimate manipulation tactic. By playing the secret philanthropist, he convinces her that all his violence is just a dark necessity for a heart of gold. Before her brain can even process the lie, he grabs her arm and steers her toward a locked door, telling her she is going to love this. The door opens to reveal his ultimate trophy room, hundreds of incredibly rare, first edition books trapped behind custom glass. This is pure megalomaniac behavior, hoarding priceless things just to prove he is untouchable. Clara actually gasps when she sees a protected copy of The Great Gatsby. Lorenzo punches a code into the security pad and tells her she is allowed to hold it. Do you see the manipulation here? By giving her the keys to his most guarded vault, he is making her feel incredibly special. He is elevating her above everyone else in his world, planting the exact seeds of dependency that turn hostages into devoted followers. Clara touches that fragile cover like it is a holy relic completely swallowed whole by his psychological theater. She softly asks how he started collecting, and Lorenzo immediately weaponizes his own tragedy. His voice drops, and he talks about his dead mother and buying Dante's Inferno. Let me tell you, dropping a childhood trauma bomb is the fastest way to trigger a woman's urge to save you. He walks her through his favorites, spinning some tragic, fake memory for every single book. Then, he pulls out one specific copy just for her. He looks her dead in the eye and says he bought it because it reminded him of her the first time they met. This level of hyper-personalization is the exact moment the parachute fails, and Clara goes into an absolute emotional free fall. And the book he hands her, a first edition of The Bloody Chamber, literally a collection of dark fairy tales. The irony is just screaming at us. Clara is stunned by how well he supposedly gets her. He smoothly tells her she has the exact same fire as the heroines in those pages, women who refuse to be victims. As he takes the book back, his fingers deliberately brush against hers, sealing the mental manipulation with physical heat. Clara starts justifying her intense attraction, totally confusing a predator's calculated mirroring with a genuine soulmate connection. This is how survival works in a trap. Her brain flips the narrative from a lethal threat to a tragic romance just to cope. The tension in that room is suffocating, until Lorenzo finally breaks it and says they should eat. You and I have probably seen this exact setup in 100 mobster movies, right? Lorenzo serves up this massive sensory overload on a dark ocean terrace. We are talking fresh seafood, vintage wine, the kind of decadent dessert that just melts your logical defenses. The vibe is perfect, and then, boom. Hit pause right here. The housekeeper clears the plates, his phone vibrates, and the romantic lead vanishes. Instantly, his face turns to stone. He is the ruthless kingpin again, walking off to take a call and leaving her spinning in the wind. That psychological whiplash is exactly what keeps a person desperate for the warmth to come back. The hard lesson in life is that when someone builds a perfect fantasy just for you, they are usually hiding a nightmare right behind the curtain. So Clara is left sitting, staring out at the hypnotic, crashing waves. You can actually see her trying to shrink her fierceness against the vastness of the water, just pure, desperate coping. She is so spaced out that she does not even hear him slide back into the scene. Suddenly, his presence is right behind her, heavy and oppressive like gravity. Lorenzo looks at the black water and casually drops this absolute gem of a red flag, saying the ocean does not care about human problems. It is just a massive projection of his own empty, ruthless soul. And what does Clara do? She senses his dark mood and quietly asks if he is okay, slipping right into the caretaker role. The real tragedy here is that trying to fix a broken person usually just ends up breaking you in the process. Lorenzo clinically mentions a developing situation with a rival crew, then tells her not to worry. Just a casual sprinkle of mob violence over dessert. It is a pure test. He drops the detail about a rival family to spike her adrenaline and remind her she is sitting with an apex predator. He reads her panicked face like a human lie detector and straight up asks if his criminal empire bothers her. Clara, trying to be brave, admits it should bother anyone. You expect him to snap, but instead he is amused. He tells her other women live in denial, and she proudly fires back that she is not like other women. Then he steps in close, using his sheer body heat to trap her. Life teaches us a brutal truth here. Sometimes our own pride can easily blind us to the cage we are willingly walking into. Let us pause and look at this piece by piece. His hand reaches up to softly cup her cheek. That right there is the fatal strike. The gentle touch of a known killer completely scrambles the brain, mixing pure terror with sudden affection. He traces her lip and whispers that he should probably send her home. It is a brilliant, sick illusion of choice. He has zero intention of letting her leave. Clara stares back over the roaring waves and asks if that is what he really wants. Lorenzo locks eyes with her and confesses he wants to own her entirely. Then he flips the script, demanding to know what she wants, making her choose her own capture. The lesson is terrifying but true. Real predators do not drag you into the dark. They just hold the open door and patiently wait for you to walk inside. Any sane person would be sprinting for the airport to get away from this violent mob boss. But instead, we watch the tragedy of Stockholm Syndrome take the wheel. Clara actually rises onto her toes and voluntarily closes the distance. She brushes her lips against his, whispering her consent and completely sealing her fate. That tiny act of submission just shatters his restraint. Like Lorenzo grabs her, crushing against his chest, mixing terrifying dominance with a sick kind of tenderness. She totally surrenders, her hands grabbing at his neck like she is drowning. When they finally pull apart gasping, his eyes are just empty, pitch-black voids. He warns her to be absolutely certain. The hard lesson here? We often lock our own cages because we desperately mistake dangerous intensity for true love. Now we hit the absolute point of no return. Lorenzo looks her dead in the eye and says if they cross this line, he will never let her go. That is a literal threat. It should have sent her running. Instead, it hits her brain like pure dopamine. She tells him she is certain. He pulls her into the isolated wing of his compound, into a fortified bedroom, staring out at the black water. This is where the trauma bond is physically cemented. They collapse onto the bed in total chaos, his hands pushing away the silk of her dress, his mouth leaving a burning trail across her skin. It looks like a sweeping romance, but hit pause and look closer. The harsh life lesson is that total consumption is never the same thing as affection. The megalomaniac just successfully devoured his willing prey. Let us slow down and really watch this trauma bond take root. Lorenzo, a textbook narcissist, is whispering sweet praises against Clara's skin, totally short-circuiting her logic. He confesses he has been obsessing over her since yesterday. Clara feels this massive physical pull and starts unbuttoning his shirt. But when the fabric drops, the fantasy cracks. His chest is covered in brutal, violent scars. She touches one on his ribs, and he casually brushes it off as a bloody knife fight in Moscow. That detail alone should have her sprinting for a taxi. Instead, her biology completely overrides her common sense. It is so tragic to watch. The simple, harsh life lesson here is laid out perfectly. Intense physical chemistry can easily blind us to our most basic survival instincts. You have to watch how the predator builds fake security. Lorenzo grabs the zipper of her dress, but he intentionally stops. He makes deep eye contact and waits for her nod. It is a brilliant illusion of consent from a guy who takes whatever he wants by force. He pulls the fabric down slowly, trading his usual violence for a calculated, mind-bending tenderness. He treats her like fragile art, silently asking permission for every touch. Later, as she rests her head on his scarred chest, he traces slow circles on her back. Clara feels this heavy, narcotic peace wash over her. It breaks your heart because that peace is just Stockholm Syndrome settling in. The ultimate life lesson is that finding false safety in the arms of your greatest threat is exactly how you lose yourself completely. The mental dissonance happening in Clara's head right now is staggering to witness. All logic is screaming at her to panic, yet she feels this bizarre sense of true belonging. Lorenzo kisses her temple, softly asking what she is thinking, and she actually admits she should be terrified of him. His reaction is a dark masterpiece. He tightens his grip and promises she has absolutely nothing to fear from him. She knows he runs a violent syndicate. She knows his bloody history, but she actively chooses to swallow the lie. She falls asleep in the arms of a literal murderer, convinced that belonging to him is just fate. The devastating life lesson here is that even the sharpest minds will happily rewrite reality when the human need to feel protected and loved becomes desperate enough. Look at the sheer genius of his isolation tactics the next morning. Clara wakes up completely alone, and the bedroom windows have electronically frosted over. She is literally sealed inside his world. Lorenzo is gone, leaving behind nothing but an order to eat breakfast and wait for his drive. Oh, and a velvet box. Inside is a gold chain with a diamond key pendant. She sits there watching the jewels shine in the morning light, feeling the massive psychological weight of the gift. Is it a key to his dark heart or the lock on her new cell? It does not matter, because by keeping it, she is already accepting her captivity. The simple, timeless life lesson we always seem to forget is that a gilded cage is still a prison. No matter how beautifully it sparkles in the morning sun, wanders into his massive bathroom and actually puts on his clothes, physically wrapping herself in her captor's identity. Downstairs, the housekeeper is waiting with a huge breakfast and coffee made exactly the way Clara likes it. The mob boss literally profiled her coffee habits. Then the housekeeper casually drops a full itinerary. Clara is going home to change, and then she has lunch with Lorenzo's sisters. Hit pause. The pure disorientation here is entirely on purpose. He is flooding her with rapid-fire plans, so she has zero time to put up boundaries. She did not even know he had a sister yesterday, and now she is meeting the family. The life lesson? When someone rushes to dismantle your reality, it is because they want to build your new walls before you even notice. Notice how he completely controls her communication, the ultimate power move. Clara reaches for her phone only to realize it was mysteriously separated from her all night. The housekeeper smoothly hands back her bag, casually mentioning Lorenzo had to handle a sudden incident. The cold, deadpan way this lady talks about mob violence finally gives Clara a flash of real panic. She checks her phone and sees missed calls from her real life, plus a slick text from an unknown number. It is Lorenzo, charmingly apologizing and promising his sister will not bite. He is literally managing her emotions via remote control, keeping her totally confused but smiling. The chilling life lesson to walk away with is that manufactured charm is always the deadliest weapon a true manipulator owns. Hit pause on the movie for a second. Notice how the thrill of the trap completely overrides Clara's basic survival instincts. This guy practically puts a diamond collar around her neck, ships her back to her tiny, depressing apartment, and before she can even blink, his driver is hauling her to some ultra-exclusive spot in Back Bay. The sheer whiplash is the whole point. He is deliberately starving her of the mental space to realize she is being hunted. And here is the brutal life lesson we all ignore. When someone rushes you into a fairy tale, they are usually trying to distract you from the nightmare. Clara is just blindly riding the roller coaster right into the dark. Stick with me here because this is where the game gets incredibly twisted. They sit Clara down with Isabella Falcone, Lorenzo's sister. Now, Isabella plays the sophisticated European aristocrat perfectly. She has the designer suit, the flawless hair, the warm smile. But if you look closely, right behind those dark eyes, she has the exact same cold, dead predator stare as her brother. She is not here to be the fun sister-in-law. She is a corporate auditor for the mob, sent to figure out if Clara is a liability. The sad truth of life is that our most dangerous enemies rarely show up holding a weapon. Usually, they arrive buying us an expensive lunch and pretending to be our closest friend. The entire lunch is a masterclass in psychological bullying dressed up as high society manners. Isabella does not even let Clara look at a menu. She just orders a vintage wine, a subtle little flex to prove who holds the leash. When Clara tries to pump the brakes, pointing out she only met Lorenzo 2 days ago, Isabella literally waves it off with her diamond-covered wrist. She blames her brother's impulsive nature, completely normalizing this insane, obsessive rush. It breaks your heart to watch because we have all been there. The life lesson? Never let anyone make you feel crazy for needing time. The moment someone dismisses your boundaries as an inconvenience, they are already planning to break them. Then Isabella goes straight for the throat. She demands to know what magic trick Clara used to hook the city's most ruthless syndicate leader. Clara shrinks down, claiming she is nobody special, which is exactly the bleeding wound a family of predators is looking to exploit. Isabella coldly demands to know Clara's true intentions. Clara practically chokes on her drink. She rightly points out the absolute absurdity of interrogating the hostage instead of the guy who locked the door. Isabella just gives this fake, chilling smile. It is a harsh reminder for all of us. Manipulative people will always make you answer for the chaos they created. They will set your house on fire and ask why you brought the matches. Here is the craziest psychological flip in the whole movie. Isabella sits there and paints Lorenzo a literal mob boss as the poor, vulnerable victim. And the tragic part is, Lorenzo probably believes it himself. He thinks his wealth is a curse that isolates him. Isabella scans Clara's face like a lie detector, asking if she truly understands the violent reality of Lorenzo's world. Clara, breaking our hearts, admits she kind of does. She knows the risk, but she slept in his bed anyway. The painful life lesson here is that you cannot save a broken person with your innocence. Knowing the stove is hot does not make the burns hurt any less when you willingly place your hand on the burner. Need to look at this exact moment, because this is where the trauma bond gets locked in forever. Isabella casually mentions that a smart, rational girl would have run screaming in the opposite direction by now. When Clara jokingly calls herself stupid, Isabella hits her with the devastating truth. It is not stupidity. It is that absolute, terrifying power is incredibly intoxicating. Clara squirms, hating how easily this woman is detecting her soul. Then Isabella slaps the label of love onto the situation, completely validating a 48-hour hostage crisis as romance. Listen, the hardest lesson to learn is that adrenaline is not affection. A racing heart just means you are in mortal danger. Once the hooks are buried deep, Isabella suddenly switches to the nice cop routine. Over a plate of expensive tiramisu, she starts asking about Clara's writing dreams, acting like they are just two girlfriends catching up. Clara admits she expected a crude gangster stereotype, not a cultured aristocrat. Isabella just smiles, completely unbothered by the criminal label. Then she drops the ultimate trap. She casually mentions that Lorenzo trusts absolutely no one in this world. Boom. Clara instantly feels like the chosen one. It is a fatal flaw in human nature. We all desperately want to believe we are the exception to the rule. But if someone is a monster to the entire world, they will eventually be a monster to you. Clara tentatively asks about the family business, and Isabella openly admits she runs the so-called legitimate side of things. The real estate, the restaurants, the massive money laundering operations required to wash the blood off their cash. It sends a freezing chill right down Clara's spine. This polished, elegant woman is just as dirty as the guys with the guns. Then Isabella stares right through her and asks where Clara sees herself fitting into this nightmare. Clara is completely overwhelmed and honestly answers that she does not know. That is the tragedy of it. The lesson here is that if you do not define your own boundaries early on, ruthless people will happily define them for you, and you will not like the cage. Physically painful to watch this happen, because Isabella is practically handing Clara the instruction manual to her own destruction. She openly warns that Lorenzo operates like a classic megalomaniac. He sees a shiny object, he conquers it, he locks it away. Yet she brilliantly plants this tiny seed of doubt, making Clara think Lorenzo is terrified of losing her. It is such a twisted way to make a predator look like a helpless puppy. Suddenly, Isabella gets a text summoning them to an art gallery, and Clara immediately shrinks, feeling totally out of her depth. The everyday truth is, manipulators thrive on keeping you off balance. When you feel completely inadequate, you are infinitely easier to control. This is the part that makes you want to yell at the screen. Clara knows exactly what is happening. The guy is pre-selecting her wardrobe and shipping her to specific coordinates like a piece of mail. A healthy person would be sprinting for the nearest police station. But Clara, she is riding a massive wave of adrenaline. Lorenzo's suffocating wealth has completely short-circuited her survival instincts. They arrive at this converted warehouse packed with elite snobs, and Isabella marches her right past the champagne into a private VIP room. Inside, a rack of expensive dresses, all bearing Clara's name. The brutal life lesson here is simple. A cage is still a cage, no matter how much gold they use to paint the bars. Isabella walks out and shuts the door, leaving Clara entirely isolated with this psychological uniform. It is a stunning black cocktail dress, mathematically designed to draw attention straight to that diamond key locked around her throat. Sure, there are other dresses on the rack, offering this sick illusion of free will, but Clara knows exactly what the boss wants. She slips it on, looks in the mirror, and the innocent girl from the third-floor apartment is completely gone. She feels this artificial, intoxicating surge of power. It is heartbreaking to witness. The ultimate lesson of losing yourself is that the devil rarely has to force you into chains. If he makes them sparkle enough, you will put them. Listen up, guys. Let us pause the movie right here. Look at Clara walking in with her new look, getting that instant nod of approval from his sister. They immediately run interference to stop Lorenzo from turning an artist into a modern art project. The sister casually drops that some guy owes the mob boss money like they are discussing the weather. This is the magic trick of the underworld. Clara is adjusting her own moral compass just to survive. And then, boom, he steps into the frame. Lorenzo looks like a shark swimming in a tank full of guppies, wearing a tailored charcoal suit. In a room bursting with billionaires, he is the only one who matters. He carries that suffocating gravity of a man deciding who lives or dies. The lesson here is simple. If you hang around the devil long enough, the heat stops bothering you. Watch the camera angle shift. There he is, actively terrorizing a poor painter with his goons. But the exact second his eyes find Clara, it is like somebody flipped a switch. A true narcissist has this terrifying superpower to completely erase the rest of the world when they spot their favorite toy. He strides across the floor and grabs her, laying down a deep kiss right in front of the high society crowd. Make no mistake, this is not a romantic comedy moment. This is a predator marking his territory. Clara does not even flinch at the spectacle. She just melts into the heat and the pressure, her own identity quietly fading away. He whispers that he missed her, his thick accent wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. Here is the bitter truth. Sometimes the most inescapable prisons are built entirely out of sweet words. Clara murmurs a soft complaint, whispering that he really should have woken her up. And what does Lorenzo do? He slides his hand right down to the base of her spine. Listen up, guys, because this right here is not romance. That is a physical barcode being slapped on her. He is telling every single person in that room she belongs to him now. His sister stands there, watching this whole circus with a smirk, dropping a comment about their lunch. Lorenzo shoots his own flesh and blood, a look so cold it could freeze time. God forbid anyone goes off his perfect script. The second his sister backs off, he turns right back to Clara, flipping the switch from stone-cold killer to the ultimate savior. Here is the harsh truth. Sometimes the person rescuing you from the fire is the exact same one who struck the match. Clara tries to gently poke at the terrifying reality of his mafia lifestyle, bringing up a dark secret the housekeeper let slip. Lorenzo slams that door shut in her face instantly. It is an absolute, bulletproof glass wall, and she is not allowed to leave fingerprints on it. Panicking, Clara retreats to safer ground, asking how on earth he knew her exact dress size. And boom, here comes the textbook love bombing. He leans in, voice dripping with fake vulnerability, claiming he only pays attention to the things that truly matter. And right then, Clara's heart actually skips a beat. You can feel the tragic irony, right? She is looking at the obsessive, suffocating focus of a total monster, and she is misinterpreting it as a fairy tale romance. The lesson here is brutal but necessary. Attention does not always equal affection. Stick with me here because this is where everything in her reality starts to crack. Clara feels this wild, dizzying mix of pure terror and absolute intoxication. That exact chemical rush in her brain is the foundation of a trauma bond. Lorenzo takes her hand, parading her through the art gallery while his armed guards form a human wall around them. He stares at the abstract paintings with the same cold calculation he used to run his criminal empire. Everyone in that gallery is staring. Clara nervously points out the crowd, but Lorenzo brushes them off with sheer arrogance. A king needs a stage, and he is showing off his shiny new prize to the world. It breaks your heart to watch. The bitter truth? True love protects you from the staring crowd. It never puts you on a pedestal just to feed its own massive ego. Hearing that possessive growl in his voice sends a literal shiver down Clara's spine. It suddenly hits her. This is not some passing crush. This guy is silently taking over every single corner of her life. Just as they stop to look at a massive painting of blues and golds, the whole mood in the room shatters. A woman who looks exactly like Lorenzo's usual type is standing there, gripping her glass so hard her knuckles are pure white. Clara asks who she is, and Lorenzo instantly trashes the woman, calling her a worthless mistake from his past. That is the brutal final stage of the toxic cycle. The old victim, Elena, starts marching right toward them. Never forget this simple rule. When someone casually degrades the people they used to love, you are just looking at a preview of your own future. Elena walks up putting on a painfully fake show of politeness, but Lorenzo gives her absolutely nothing. His eyes are dead. Zero empathy. He introduces Elena to Clara as just some random acquaintance. Think about how much that stings. He is erasing their entire history with one single word. You can see the pure humiliation wash over Elena's face. Desperate to crack his icy control, she pulls out her only weapon. She brings up a ring, looking Clara dead in the eye, trying to warn her about the cliff she is walking toward. Elena tells her straight up that once the shiny newness wears off, Clara is going straight in the trash too. It is this tragic moment of a ghost screaming a warning to the next victim. The hardest part of life is that we rarely listen to the red flags until we are already falling. Lorenzo's voice drops to a terrifying, quiet whisper. Right on cue, his armed goons step up, boxing the women in. It is a chilling reminder that beneath the expensive suits, he is a man capable of ending your life. Elena sees the threat and backs off, but she leaves Clara with one last, haunting truth. She warns her that everything this kingpin touches eventually burns to the ground. And honestly, she is right. Elena walks away, leaving a thick, heavy panic in the air. Once the problem is gone, Lorenzo goes right back to his smooth apologies, trying to put the mask back on. But you can see the damage is done. Clara finally shows a tiny spark of survival instinct and asks him if the ring actually exists. The truth is, once a seed of doubt is planted, no amount of smooth talking can ever dig it up. You and I are finally seeing a real crack in his armor here. Lorenzo gets annoyed, immediately flipping the script to blame his ex. He claims the ring was a meaningless gift and that they ended things years ago. It is the oldest trick in the toxic playbook. You always paint the person you hurt as the crazy one. Then, he shuts the conversation down entirely. Clara feels a cold panic wash over her, realizing she might be looking at her own expiration date. To stop her from pulling away, Lorenzo traps her face in his hands, locking her into his physical space. He feeds her the sweet lie that their connection is different. When she points out they barely know each other, He smiles like he owns it. Here is a life lesson to remember. True love gives you space to breathe, but control demands all of your oxygen. He locks his eyes onto hers, not blinking once, as his thumbs slowly trace her cheekbones. He tells her they belong together from the exact second he first saw her. Any person thinking clearly would hear warning sirens because that is pure stalker behavior. But the Stockholm Syndrome has already sunk its teeth in. Instead of running for the hills, Clara feels an intense, dizzying thrill. She actually convinces herself that being held hostage by a mafia boss is just romantic destiny. She thinks she found her soulmate in the arms of a violent criminal. Seeing that he has her perfectly brainwashed again, Lorenzo grabs her and they leave the party without a single goodbye to his sister or the host. He has successfully cut her off from the world. We have to remember that isolation is always the very first lock on the cage. Let's pause and watch how Clara gets pulled out of that gallery. Notice how he moves her. Lorenzo isolates her completely, dragging her into the dark car and the empty hallway, spaces where he has total power. Pushing her up against the wall might look like fiery passion, but it is purely about physical dominance. When he whispers about the key around her neck, he is chaining her mind to a literal object. He overwhelms her senses so heavily that she confuses his aggressive grip for deep desire. She is completely blind to how cold and calculated this trap really is. It breaks your heart to watch her surrender to it. It is a fatal mistake we see far too often in life. We convince ourselves we are safe in a beautiful castle, completely ignoring the fact that the golden bars are permanently locked from the outside. He whispers that the key unlocks the darkest, hidden parts of his soul. Please understand, this is a masterclass in fake vulnerability. Guys running criminal empires do not just hand out trust. They use trust as a weapon to buy loyalty. By making Clara feel like she is the one special exception to his madness, he guarantees she will never leave. As they finally cross that physical line, Clara feels an incredibly warm, drug-like peace just listening to his heartbeat. It is gut-wrenching to witness. This is the exact moment the trauma bond seals shut. She starts looking at her captor and seeing a protector. She is taking the pure adrenaline of simply surviving him and calling it true love. And that brings us to a harsh truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous lies in the world are the ones we tell ourselves just to feel safe in the dark. Look closely at what is happening inside Clara's head right now. Her logical brain is screaming at her, waving massive red flags about how dangerous this guy really is. She even says it out loud, admitting that falling for him this fast is completely crazy. And what is his response? He tells her to stop thinking and just feel. You and I have seen this trick before. He is ordering her to turn off the smart, analytical part of her brain and drown in the addictive rush of emotions he is feeding her. He knows that if she stops to think for even 1 second, she will run out the door. It is so hard to watch someone give away their own mind like that, but it leaves us with a critical lesson for our own lives. A quiet mind is easily conquered, which is exactly why you must never let anyone silence your own intuition. For one brief second, Elena's warning echoes in Clara's head. The terrifying reality that men like Lorenzo will throw you away the minute they get bored. When Clara asks him what he actually wants from her, his answer makes your blood run cold. He wants everything, every minute of her day, her entire existence. Any normal person would hear that and sprint for the nearest exit. He is not asking to be her partner. He is planting a flag and claiming ownership over her soul. The scariest part of this guy is that he has zero concept of boundaries. He wants to erase her identity until he is the only thing left in her world. It is the tragic romance trope turned sour. The reality we have to remember is that true love is about building a beautiful life together, not erasing one person just to keep the other one fed. But instead of running away, Clara's deepest insecurities rush forward to meet him. She has this massive, aching wound inside her, this desperate, crushing need to simply matter to someone. And a predator like Lorenzo, he maps out those broken pieces perfectly and pours himself right into the cracks. When she questions the constant violence surrounding him, he plays his final, deadliest card. He promises to keep her safe. It is brilliant and absolutely terrifying. He points at the monsters waiting outside and then tells her he is the only locked door keeping them away. He creates the danger and then sells her the protection. It is a brutal thing to watch unfold on screen. The life lesson here is chilling but entirely true. The worst kind of predators know exactly which emotional voids to fill, and they will always use our own deepest desires against us. Let's pause right here and really listen to the exact words he's sliding out of his mouth. He says, "I protect what is mine." Guys, that is not a romantic vow. That is a straight-up inventory check. He is slapping a barcode on her, completely stripping away any mutual respect. But Clara? She is so desperate for a lifeline in this paranoid world of his that she hears it as a beautiful promise. She is handing over the keys to her own free will without even realizing the transaction is happening. It breaks your heart because the guy offering to be her human shield is the exact same guy she needs a shield to survive against. Here is a simple truth to carry with you. Real safety will never, ever ask you to hand over your freedom in exchange for survival. Notice how he smoothly tells her not to decide tonight. It is a brilliant little magic trick, giving her the illusion of choice and stopping her urge to run. Fast forward to the next morning, and the mask slips. He sits there, fully armored in a tailored suit, wide awake, staring at her while she is asleep and defenseless. This isn't some cute movie romance. It is a cold, calculated power move. He is marking his territory, proving he is the vigilant predator, while she is just a pet in his glass cage. It hurts to watch, but we have to accept the reality of the situation. When a person demands your complete vulnerability while staying totally guarded themselves, they aren't trying to love you. They are actively preparing to rule you. The trap officially snaps shut with something as tiny as a gift box. Inside is a shiny key to a high-security penthouse. Clara tries to put up a weak fight, reminding him that she actually has her own apartment. But a guy like this cannot stand it when you have a safe space he does not control. He immediately trashes her home, calling it unsafe and completely unfit for her. He demands she move into his fortress, where his massive wealth controls every single thing she eats, breathes, and sees. She thinks she is being swept off her feet, but she is really just getting swept under the rug. It is a bitter lesson, but a true one. The moment someone insists on providing every single thing for you, they are also deciding exactly what you are allowed to keep. You and I have to look at how he pulls off this total isolation. Out of nowhere, he drops the vague threat about unstable enemies and dangerous business deals. Guys, this is textbook manipulation from a master controller. By making up this invisible, terrifying threat out in the city, he magically turns his penthouse into the only safe place on Earth. He is literally weaponizing the violence of his own life to crush whatever fight she has left. Now Clara has to pick between the terrifying unknown of the streets or the quiet luxury of her captor's cage. He already knows exactly which one she will choose. And that brings us to a heavy life lesson. Fear is the absolute fastest way to convince a person to lock their own cell door and swallow the key. Now, watch the absolute genius of his manipulation. He doesn't order her to move. He begs her, framing it as a favor for his own peace of mind. He drops all his emotional baggage right on her shoulders. And of course, Clara caves. She takes that heavy brass key, crossing the line from an independent person to a piece of property. You can literally feel his relief because the final lock just clicked. Without skipping a beat, he sends his heavy Enzo to pack up her life. The gears of her captivity are already grinding away, leaving her zero time to second-guess the decision. It is tragic how beautifully it works, because the honest truth is we are never more easily trapped than when we believe we are just doing someone else a favor. Suddenly, Clara is floating in this frictionless bubble of extreme wealth. We are talking private drivers, heavy security, and a penthouse high above the clouds. But pause the movie right here and look at the closet. It is fully stocked with brand new designer clothes, magically tailored to her exact size. This isn't romantic. It is completely sick. He is systematically erasing who she used to be and dressing up his new doll to his exact specifications. But because she is drowning in this twisted trauma bond, she thinks it is just incredibly thoughtful. She is losing her identity one silk dress at a time. It leaves us with a pretty stark lesson. Genuine generosity is meant to lift you up, but calculated gifts are just a shiny down payment on your future obedience. The actual move happens with the cold, dead efficiency of a military raid. His guy Enzo just stands there like a statue, while Clara crams her entire independent life into one sad little duffel bag. She grabs her laptop and a picture of her dad, clinging to the absolute last scraps of who she used to be. Stick with me here, because this threshold is permanent. The second she steps into that private elevator, holding his electronic pass and his brass key, her old world is dead. It doesn't matter how gorgeous that penthouse architecture is. At the end of the day, it is just a solitary confinement cell floating in the sky. And here is the brutal truth of the matter. Leaving your past behind becomes a fatal mistake when someone else is entirely in control of your future. Now, let's step back and look at the physical space she is trapped in. Clara is standing alone in this sterile, modern art museum of a penthouse, and it feels absolutely freezing. The master closet is overflowing with those custom dresses, and the pantry is stuffed with the finest food and wine. It is the dictionary definition of a gilded cage. You can see it in her eyes. For a split second, she realizes the terrifying reality of what is happening. Yes, she is being taken care of, but she is basically a prized animal on display for a total megalomaniac. The lesson staring us right in the face is impossible to ignore. Even if a golden cage is built perfectly to your exact measurements, you have to remember that it is still designed to keep you locked inside. While she stares out at the endless city lights, her phone buzzes. It is him asking if she is happy. She replies that it is beautiful, but feels lonely without him there. His response is perfectly timed, telling her he misses her and that everything in the penthouse belongs to her now. This is where the emotional hook really sinks deep. That little rush of dopamine completely wipes out all her logical red flags. 3 days ago, she was a normal girl worrying about rent. Now, she is desperately waiting for a criminal mastermind to text her back. It is a wild, tragic shift in reality, and it serves as a powerful reminder for all of us. Genuine safety and security are never actually won by trading away your fundamental right to be an independent human being. It is an insanely seductive trap wrapping her in a warm blanket of fake security while quietly cutting off her oxygen. She walks around gripping that metal key like a religious artifact, physically tying her mind to his sickness. 3 whole days just melt away in this weird, disconnected fog. She floats through the massive apartment like a ghost, sleeping in his bed, absorbing his dark energy. Her only lifeline to the real world is his random text messages assuring her he is handling things. When a massive bouquet of roses shows up to calm her nerves, you have to admit his isolation game is absolutely flawless. The takeaway here is a warning we all need to hear. Always beware of the beautiful, expensive gifts that quietly cut your ties to the outside world. Day 3 of this high-altitude prison, and the silence finally breaks when his sister calls. Isabella drops a bomb, saying things are complicated and he sent her to check in. Clara practically begs for help, admitting she is going crazy and hasn't left the box. But Isabella's reaction is chilling. She says that is exactly what Lorenzo wants. Clara can hear the panic hiding in the sister's voice and finally demands the real truth about the danger they are in. Isabella cracks and admits there was an assassination attempt on Lorenzo. It is a huge wake-up call that Clara almost misses entirely. The lesson here should be carved in stone. Extreme secrecy in a romantic relationship is rarely ever designed to protect you. It is usually designed to protect the lies. You and I need to break down what happens next, because it is wild. Isabella calmly mentions the attackers have been dealt with, which is just a polite way to say they were murdered. Clara feels a brief flash of pure terror, but that trauma bond immediately kicks in and smothers it. Instead of running, she only cares if her captor is bleeding. Isabella literally offers her a way out right then and there. But Clara rejects her own freedom. She begs to see him instead. The sheer speed of her surrender is terrifying. Isabella promises to pass the message along, knowing it is exactly what his twisted ego wants to hear. The cage door clicks shut from the inside. It is a haunting lesson. Feeling deep fear for a monster does not magically transform them into a saint. The mental gymnastics she is doing right now are just staggering. She knows hitmen tried to gun Lorenzo down, and she knows he is probably bleeding somewhere out in the city. But her brain twists his absence into this noble act of protection, totally blind to the fact that he is just managing his chess pieces. By morning 4, the quiet is driving her insane, so she heads down to the private gym. But notice the tragedy here. She is still following his rules, staying perfectly inside the glass walls of her beautiful cage. She runs on the treadmill until her lungs burn, trying to escape the pressure. But no matter how fast she sprints, the life lesson catches up. All the physical momentum in the world can never outrun true psychological captivity. Let us fast forward to the apartment scene. Clara suddenly gets that chill down her spine. She turns and boom, Lorenzo is blocking the only way out. He is staring at her like a king who just won a bloody war. But look at the wardrobe choice. He is wearing a soft, dark sweater, putting that nasty bruise on his jaw on full display. This guy is a certified genius at playing the victim. A normal person would run screaming for the fire escape. Clara just stands there, completely paralyzed by this messy blender of relief, rage, and crushing loneliness. Before she can even think, he crosses the room and swallows her up in a massive hug. She completely caves in, giving up the fight without throwing a single punch. The hard lesson of the day is this. A monster looking hurt is exactly when they are most dangerous to your heart. You and I are going to unpack the tragedy of this conversation. Notice how fast she waves the white flag. She whispers that he is okay acting like he is the actual victim. He squeezes her tighter, making sure she remembers she needs him. He feeds her a line about staying away to keep her safe. But then she drops a bomb, saying Isabella spilled the beans about the assassination attempt. Pause and look at his face. For a split second, he looks ready to snap a neck because he lost control of the script. He mutters that his sister should not have worried her. Clara tries to stand her ground, saying he should have told her himself. He simply hits her with a heavy sigh and claims he was just shielding her from his dark reality. The painful lesson to remember is that manipulation almost always wears the shiny armor of protection. He is honestly unbelievable, packaging his lies like a wrapped birthday present. He kept her in the dark just to give her plausible deniability. When she finally asks the million-dollar question about what happened to the hitmen, he slams the door in her face, saying it is not something she needs to know. But the silence is deafening. We all know this mobster did not just survive an attack. He definitely turned his rivals into ghost stories. Clara realizes she is standing with a killer and demands they take this upstairs. He plays the gentleman and escorts her to the penthouse elevator. The moment the doors open, she runs straight to the shower Anna to clean herself off. But the harsh life lesson here is brutal. You can scrub until your skin is completely raw, but you can never wash away the darkness you actively choose to invite in. The camera cuts to her walking out of the bathroom, and the tension is suffocating. Lorenzo has set the stage perfectly, standing dead center with 2 glasses of expensive whiskey. She downs that liquid courage and demands the absolute truth. You can see the wheels turning in his head as he calculates exactly how much horror she can stomach. He talks about a rival cartel stepping on his toes, making a turf war sound like a simple business dispute. He casually mentions sending warnings. Pause and look at his hands. He is swirling his drink without a single tremor while describes a heavily armed hit squad coming to kill him. It is absolutely chilling to witness. The life lesson here is terrifyingly simple. When a monster finally takes off the mask, you must pay attention to the blood on their hands, not the gentle rhythm of their voice. Stick with me, because this is where the movie breaks your heart. His voice drops into a terrifying, flat tone. He explains his guards killed 2 men, but the third fired a shot. Clara is so far gone into Stockholm Syndrome that she actually reaches out and softly strokes the bruise on his jaw. He smoothly blames the injury on flying glass from a broken mirror. But when she asks what happened to the guys who ordered the hit, his eyes go dead. He calmly promises they will never send anyone else again. That freezing tone should have her sprinting for the hills. Instead, she just stands there, desperately trying to connect the man she loves with a stone-cold executioner. The vital life lesson we all need to learn is this: your love is powerful, but it will never be the magic cure for a person who has 0 empathy left in their soul. This guy built an entire empire purely on cracking skulls and striking fear. Clara finally says the quiet part out loud, realizing that being with him means living inside a permanent war zone. He simply puts his heavy hand right over hers, reminding her who holds the power. He openly admits it, telling her he will not insult her intelligence by pretending he is a good guy. Clara pulls away and walks over to the massive penthouse windows, staring down at the glowing city. It looks so peaceful from up there, but the psychological trap in her mind is already locked tight. She knows about the blood running in those streets. Still facing the glass, she begs him for one final piece of honesty. The painful life lesson staring us right in the face is that asking a master manipulator for the truth only ever buys you a much more sophisticated lie. Watch her try one last time to break through his walls. She demands reality, not just the sweet words she wants to hear. He stares into her soul and promises total honesty. She turns around, tossing a massive test grenade into the room. She asks what he would do if she walked out the door right that second. The guy deserves a literal Oscar. He fakes a perfect flicker of heartbreak and claims he would just let her go. He even promises to set her up with a massive bank account. When she questions if he would lock her up, he acts deeply offended. He plays the wounded puppy, shocked that she would think he could ever keep her in a cage. The psychological trap snaps completely shut right there. The profound life lesson we have to take away is that giving someone the illusion of a free choice is the absolute heaviest chain you can lock around their neck. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? You and I are watching the birth of a textbook trauma bond. Clara is doing mental gymnastics to convince herself this mob boss actually has a pure heart. His life is a symphony of violence, but she desperately clings to the fairy tale. Her voice shakes as she admits she is terrified. She is not scared of him, but of the explosions around him. Waiting for the other shoe to drop, Lorenzo just steps closer. He does not touch her. He just uses his massive physical presence to suck the air out of the room. He flips the script, acting like her basic human survival instinct is a character flaw, bragging that he wakes up ready to die every single day. The critical life lesson here is brutally simple. True predators do not actually feel fear. They just weaponize it against the innocent people who do. Look at how he spins his deadly lifestyle into some twisted romance. It is a masterclass in isolating the victim. Clara realizes his dark confession just knocked down her last remaining wall. Remember when she used to fight this, correctly calling this circus absolute madness. Now, staring into the abyss, she is totally frozen. She actually apologizes, crying that she does not have the stomach to be a mobster's girlfriend. Without missing a beat, Lorenzo hits her with positive reinforcement. He gently strokes her cheek like she is fragile glass, whispering about how secretly strong she really is. He is just tightening the invisible leash. Crushed by his mind games, she begs for a minute to catch her breath and sort out her fractured thoughts. The life lesson here is clear. The devil does not drag you into the dark. He gently holds your hand while you walk yourself there. He acts generous, telling her she can have the penthouse and all the time in the world. He even offers to pack a bag and leave her alone for the night. Guys, this is checkmate. It is a brilliant, completely evil psychological move. The sudden threat of him walking out drops her right into the terrifying isolation he carefully built. Her nervous system hits the panic button. She reaches out and literally begs the monster to stay. The smug relief on his face is sickeningly real because he knows he just won the game. He grabs her, pulling her into an intense embrace built purely on survival panic, not love. Her body completely overrides her rational brain. They stumble toward the bedroom to permanently seal that trauma bond. The heavy life lesson to remember: the absolute hardest cage to escape is the one you actually beg your captor not to open. You and I really need to understand how trauma puts on a mask and calls itself passion. This intimacy is frantic. It is just her biology screaming to survive the Reaper living in this man's shadow. Clara traces the fresh bruises on his chest, literally running her fingers over the violence of his life. All the while, he is brainwashing her, whispering sweet promises of protection. Later on, tangled in the expensive sheets, listening to his heartbeat. The awful reality hits her. She just signed her life away. She realizes how one bad compromise can permanently derail your entire future. We all hit forks in the road, but usually without a body count attached. Lorenzo feels her pulling away mentally and instantly starts digging into her quiet thoughts. The life lesson here is tragic. One small compromise with the darkness will eventually cost you the sun. Look at this scene right here. Clara is standing there talking about consequences, and Lorenzo just goes dead silent. You have to feel for him a little bit. He spins this story about taking over the syndicate after his old man died, and in his mind, it was a tragic necessity. He honestly believes he had to become a monster to keep his family alive. But as he explains it, he grips her arm just a little too tight. He promises her a life of pure luxury, but it comes with invisible chains and cameras in every single room. Here is the life lesson, guys. When someone offers you a golden castle, make sure you check if it locks from the inside, because the most expensive cages are still cages, even if the guy holding the key thinks he is protecting you. Pause and look at this masterpiece of manipulation. Lorenzo forces her to look into his eyes, telling Clara that loving him means accepting cold-blooded ruthlessness. When she pushes back, thinking she can cure his darkness, he fakes a flicker of sadness. He offers her a massive payout to walk away, knowing her pride will reject the cash. Lorenzo smiles, turning her lack of greed into proof of their tragic bond. He drops the word love into the room like a tactical strike. It is not romance, it is a psychological bear trap. As her voice shakes, repeating the word back to him, he stands right up, towering over her. It reminds us of a harsh truth in life. Sometimes, the people who claim to love us most are really just measuring us for a beautifully decorated cage. Watch him shift gears into a textbook love-bombing routine. He claims he has been obsessed with her since they locked eyes at a gala. He praises her for seeing the man beneath the monster, feeding his narcissistic need to feel special. Clara tries to fight back with logic, arguing it is impossible to fall in love this fast. But he flips the script, asking if she felt the exact same magnetic pull. Right there, her mind simply snaps. She confuses the sheer terror of being hunted with the warmth of coming home. She whispers that she is terrified, fully aware these feelings invite pure destruction. The bitterest pill here is the life lesson she completely missed. True vulnerability requires an environment of actual safety, not just surrendering your entire soul to a smiling predator. Lorenzo leans in, spinning his obsession as a massive strategic risk that dwarfs his entire criminal empire. He stares without blinking, freezing her in place. He whispers that the biggest gambles always pay the highest tied dividends. Looking at this lethal man who just nuked her reality, Clara officially gives up the ghost. She looks back at their history, mistaking the adrenaline spike of surviving a predator for an epic romance. She actually says the words out loud, sealing her fate. Lorenzo drops his icy facade in an instant. His face lights up with a sickeningly pure, boyish joy that makes you want to scream at the screen. It is a devastating reminder that the absolute most dangerous lies we ever encounter in this life are the ones we desperately want to tell ourselves. The moment she breaks, he rewards her with heart-wrenching tenderness. It is classic reinforcement, cementing her emotional dependency. He makes her repeat the words, carving the loop into her brain. Clara complies, the fight draining right out of her eyes. Still, a tiny spark of survival instinct kicks in. She begs for a lifeline, admitting she cannot survive his blood-soaked world. Lorenzo promises to slowly numb her to the violence, asking only for absolute obedience. Clara agrees, but tries to draw a pathetic line in the sand. She demands the truth about his operations, falsely thinking the facts will protect her. Mind, the sad reality of life is that knowing the exact dimensions of the cage you are trapped in does not make you any less of a permanent prisoner. Lorenzo pretends to weigh her demand with solemn gravity. He plays the protector, arguing that keeping her in the dark is the only way to keep a bullet out of her head. Clara pushes back, insisting she needs a heads up if rival guns are pointed at their door. The kingpin gives a slow nod, handing her the fake badge of an insider. He promises to share the big picture while hiding the bloody details. Desperate to feel like a real person, Clara demands her own career and personal independence. Lorenzo just smiles at her. He loves that she still has a little bit of fire left in her chest. Life teaches us a very brutal lesson in moments like this. A broken spirit is truly tragic, but to a master manipulator, slowly taming a wild heart is the ultimate psychological trophy. Stick with me, because you and I need to watch this devastating move in slow motion. He sees her ambition and immediately weaponizes it. He promises to launch her writing career, claiming he will forge legitimate industry connections instead of just buying a publisher. This is peak narcissism. He frames himself as the magical genie granting her dreams. Her last defenses simply crumble. Clara spent her life alone, so this avalanche of powerful support feels like a miracle. She actually thinks they are building a real partnership, entirely blind to the fact that he is replacing every pillar of her life with his own. It proves that the quickest way to completely own a person is to convince them you are the only one on earth who can make their dreams come true. Lorenzo hits her with a soul-piercing stare, demanding she make a final choice. Clara runs through the terrifying catalogue of violence she knows he commits, yet she still chooses to jump into the fire. She ties her survival to a man who destroys lives for a living. The relief on his face is not love. It is the cold satisfaction of a hunter locking the cage. Fast forward 6 months, the exact time needed to cement a trauma bond. There is Clara on a balcony, watching him build a community center. She guilted him into funding so she could sleep at night. Her entire world has shrunk down to fit the footprint of his illegal empire. The tragedy of life is that when you consistently compromise your core morals for safety, you eventually forget what you were even fighting for. Her book deal becomes a reality, proving he is practically a god in her eyes. She shakes hands with his lieutenants, taking a seat inside the Mafia food chain. She floats through elite parties, branded as his personal property. She hates the label, but happily uses the bulletproof armor it provides. This is the fatal stage of Stockholm Syndrome. She does mental gymnastics to justify the cameras and the blood money funding her life. They fight constantly, explosive matches about her freedom and his lethal choices. But these fights are just a twisted release valve. They scream, they make up, and the trauma bond becomes unbreakable. It proves that sometimes the most toxic relationships disguise themselves as pure passion when they are really just a deeply destructive shared sickness. Look at this final puzzle piece with me. Clara lies awake with chronic insomnia, listening to the man she loves order brutal hits from the next room. She gets flashes of moral clarity, wondering how she became the partner of a complete monster. But she forcefully shoves those thoughts down. She looks at her publishing contract, telling herself it is proof of his respect. She thinks she is sharing a kingdom, but she is merely admiring the gold on her cage. Lost in this sick delusion, Lorenzo wraps his arms around her from behind. He kisses her head, casually reading her anxious thoughts. The defensive walls are completely gone. He has eaten her reality whole. The hardest lesson here is that when you continually ignore your conscience to please someone else, you will inevitably lose your own mind. At the 6-month mark, the brainwashing is permanent. Clara exhibits textbook Stockholm Syndrome, leaning into the chest of the predator who ruined her old life. She compares her old days of struggling to pay rent to this grand delusion of building a massive community center. This is the financial grooming of a true narcissist. He asks if she has regrets, and she turns to him entirely spellbound. She has convinced herself that a ruthless killer is somehow gentle just for her. She smiles, claiming zero regrets, treating the constant threat of death as the basic tax you pay for an epic life. The life lesson here is absolutely vital. You must never confuse dangerous proximity to a powerful person with genuine, unconditional safety. Unpack this brutal stage of conditioning with me. Lorenzo matches her emotional frequency, whispering about wanting more as she breathes out her surrender to his world. The steel trap snaps shut. He pulls out a velvet box, claiming he could not wait any longer. It opens to reveal a massive emerald. Make no mistake, that ring is an expensive physical shackle. He drops his voice into a gravelly whisper, praising her for seeing his darkness and still choosing to stay. Then he asks her to be his wife, his partner, his absolute equal. It is the most beautiful lie he has ever told. He permanently locks down his captive by offering the flawless illusion of equality. The final lesson here is deeply devastating. A beautifully decorated pedestal is really just another type of prison. Here we are, staring at the absolute climax of a psychological takeover. He asks for a marriage of equals, a brilliant deception that masks the massive power imbalance. Clara weeps, her voice perfectly steady as she accepts the ring. She is joyfully chaining herself to the man who erased her. Later, surrounded by his armed enforcers, she studies her reflection. The nervous woman from the gala 6 months ago is dead and buried. Her posture is straight. Her gaze is cold and direct. The original Clara has been entirely overwritten. The host identity is utterly gone. This megalomaniac has successfully built his perfect, obedient mirror. It leaves us with one haunting truth about human nature. The absolute most effective prisons on earth are the ones the inmates desperately fight to defend. Let's pause the movie right here and take in the sheer tragedy of this moment. Clara is sitting in the back of that armored limousine, sipping a $1,000 glass of champagne, completely lost in her own delusion. She has actually convinced herself that she chose this nightmare willingly. Lorenzo raises his glass, toasting to their partnership, and she leans into his shoulder like he is her ultimate protector. It breaks your heart because she truly believes that this cold-blooded killer is her safe harbor. She took his twisted narrative and made it her own armor. It is a harsh truth, but it teaches us something profound. The absolute worst kind of prison does not have any iron bars or locked doors, because the prisoner has been completely trained to fight for the guard. Watch how she raises her glass right now, smiling at the very people who ruined her life. When Falcone looks into her eyes and says the word together, she hears a romance instead of a life sentence. She is sitting at a table full of ruthless mobsters, listening to Giovanni laugh about the old days and Isabella joking about wedding dresses, and she actually feels at peace. The conditioning is complete. This violent mafia family is her new normal. She thinks she belongs to a powerful man, totally blind to the fact that he just owns her. She thinks he respects her fire, not realizing he already put it out It leaves us with a really dark but important life lesson. People can adapt to living in an absolute nightmare as long as everyone else in the room acts like it is a dream. This final shot is the one that really gets under your skin. Clara stands there, chin held high, basically daring the rest of the world to come after them. She is ready to take a bullet for the underworld that stole her freedom. That is the true, terrifying genius of a manipulator like Lorenzo. He did not just drag her into the shadows with him. He actually made her believe the darkness was her own beautiful idea. When she says, "Let them watch," she thinks she is being this fierce, loyal queen. In reality, she is just rattling the bars of a cage she can no longer see. It is a tough pill to swallow, but here is the final lesson for us. The most inescapable traps in life are never built with steel and concrete. They are built the moment we quietly surrender our own minds to someone else. Lorenzo Falcone is wealthy, observant, and dangerous. From the moment Clara meets him, he offers her access to a world she has never known. Private rooms, expensive cars, rare books, luxury dinners, and designer clothes, and protection. It is easy to understand why she is drawn to him. He makes her feel seen at a time when she feels invisible. He listens to her dreams, notices her kindness, and treats her like someone precious. However, the story also teaches an important lesson about power. When someone powerful enters your life quickly and intensely, admiration should not replace critical thinking. Lorenzo's attention is romantic, but it is also controlling in subtle ways. He investigates Clara without permission, sends clothes in her exact size, arranges cars, gives her keys, and moves her into spaces easy he controls. Some of these actions seem caring, but they also show how easily protection can turn into possession. The educational value here is not to say that every powerful person is dangerous, but that power must always be examined. Real love should respect boundaries. A person should be able to say no without fear of punishment or emotional pressure. Clara feels both thrilled and uneasy, and that uneasiness matters. Viewers should learn to mix tension instead of ignoring them, because relationship feels exciting. Power can make someone feel safe, but it can also create dependence. Lara's world is beautiful, but it is also fortified, secretive, and full of risks. Clara must ask herself whether she is being loved or absorbed into someone else's life. The lesson is clear. Attraction is not enough. When entering any relationship, especially with someone who has far more power, money, or influence, people must protect their independence, ask difficult questions, and recognize the difference between care and control.